sight, Saturn. Saturn is, I would say, after my research over the years, is fundamental to understanding how this, quote, bad copy became our fake reality and continues to be so. First of all, Saturn was widely worshipped in the ancient world. Question, why would it be when we can hardly frickin' see it, never mind what the ancients could do? Well, there's a story about why. This, as we see it today, wasn't always like it was, and in geologically very recent times, it wasn't like this. People like Immanuel Velikovsky and others have studied over the years and written books, and they've been followed up by people like the electric universe researchers like David Tolbert and Thornhill in books more recently, as they have looked at the evidence that there was a catastrophic upheaval in the solar system in the relatively recent past, not yesterday afternoon, but the relatively recent past, which could well sync with when this bad copy fake reality was locked in. All over the world you have global destruction myths and catastrophe myths manifesting under names like Atlantis and Lemuria and Mu, but they are unbelievable in their common themes of how they describe what happens. And after this movement of planets, which was a massive disruption of the electromagnetic order, as I mentioned earlier, which meant the stability had gone, they ended up where we see them today. Now, this is a fantastic book. I almost can't get it now, and if you can, it costs a fortune. But it represents a magnificent piece of research by this man, David Tolbert, one of the people involved in the electric universe information. It's called the Saturn myth. And what he did was study the worship of Saturn all over the world, studied its symbolism, studied what they said about it, studied why they said they worshiped Saturn. And what came out was this, that Saturn, once upon a time, was anywhere but where it is now, and at the time it had no rings. Come to that as we go along. Actually, it was the dominant planet, I would say star, sun, in the Earth sky. And the way they describe it, it went around in an orbit in sync with Mars and Venus as it moved around. And that was the dominant light, the dominant sun, if you like, from Earth in the Golden Age. And I say that Saturn is a dwarf star, which is not a great, amazing thing because there's so many dwarf stars out there, they say now, it's unbelievable. And what they said in the early astronomical traditions is that Saturn was the primeval sun. That's how they described it. And Plato referred to Saturn as Helios, the sun god. Not our sun that we see today, the Saturn sun, referred to as Helios. Now, we take Helios to mean our sun, because it's the sun god. I say that's a mistake. Actually, they were talking about Saturn. And Diodorus of Sicily, an ancient historian, reported that the Chaldeans in the same area, Sumer, Babylon, now Iraq, called Saturn by the name Helios and said that this was because Saturn was, quote, the most conspicuous of the planets, which fits exactly with Tolbert's research across and I tell you, it's across the global cultures. The creator of modern Christianity worshipped Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun. Sol, it turns out, was another name that was used for Saturn and not the sun we think we see today. So when you start to let it kind of filter through, that at least most of the ancient sun gods were referring to the Saturn sun, not the sun we see today. That would make Heliopolis, famous city of the sun in ancient Egypt, as the city of Saturn. with the obelisks, the pillars outside the temple in Heliopolis. And that relates so closely to Solomon's temple, the mythical Solomon's temple. Every syllable of Solomon means the sun. Question now is which sun? And again, you've got the two pillars outside, just as with the one in Heliopolis. Then you come to Freemasonry, and its temples have the twin pillars worshipping the sun, the Saturn sun. Come to that as we go along. So when you go in this symbol, absolutely obsessed network, you come to the twin towers, the twin pillars. A coincidence? No chance. And what are the chances of this if that is the Saturn sun, Heliopolis? This obelisk in St. Peter's Square is an original obelisk put there from Heliopolis, I would say the city of the Saturn sun. And I've been saying for years and years and years and years that the Roman church is worshipping Saturn. The Bennu bird of Heliopolis was symbolized as Atum Ra. Both symbolized Saturn. And the Bennu bird became the phoenix, which became the eagle, as Freemasonic historians talk about. They worship Saturn as the old sun, the dark lord, and the lord of the rings. Later, Satanism is Saturnism. And it's also symbolized as a eye. Now, what Talbot concluded from reading all these accounts of what happened to Saturn was this, that during these catastrophes, this is a quote from his book, the subject of the global creation legend, the global catastrophe legend, is a spectacular cosmic event actually witnessed by the ancients. Massive quantities of cosmic debris exploded from Saturn, clouding the heavens and eventually congealing into a vast band around the planet. Now, the band is described, like he said, as around the planet. However, what is described is the reflection onto that band of the sun we have today, made it seem from Earth as if there was only part of it, like a beard. And as the day moved on and the sun's angle moved, it's described as appearing that this band went around Saturn, as I'll explain. Now, this is one of Saturn's moons, and I only put this up here because it shows this light behind it. Now, the source of this light is not the same as I'm talking about, but it just gives a feel today, looking at that angle of that Saturn moon, of what it must have looked like in the way they described from Earth. This band, this luminous band. And what they said is, as the sun moved around its angle in relation to Saturn, it appeared from Earth that this was moving around around Saturn. But that became the main symbol because that appears to be what it looked like for most of the Earth day at that time. And so you see symbols relating to that all over the ancient world, which Talbot came up with. Let's just go further forward here. I'll come to something else. There's loads of them with the band and the disk Saturn. Loads of them like this, with symbolized as the horns with the planet, the sun in the middle of it. And Lord of the Rings was a name given to Saturn. And here you see in the movie, you see the same symbol and the eye of Sauron, the reptilian eye, as the source of power. They're using it now in Apple products as well. Here you have the